Welcome back to Crayon Box Weekly. Today's conversation is one that I've looked forward to because when we talk about service, accountability, and what it means to stand up for veterans, we need voices who have lived it, not just commented on it. Joining us today is Katie Chorbak, president of 5051 Veterans and a proud Jacksonville, Florida native. She's a U.S. Army veteran who served as a chemical and biological warfare specialist. So when we talk about national security, readiness, and the real world consequences of policy decisions, she brings firsthand experience to the table. Katie now works full-time in commercial construction with a major national firm, balancing a demanding professional career while staying deeply engaged in veteran advocacy. For more than a decade, she's been on the front lines pushing for better access, equity, and support for veterans and their families. Her leadership has earned national, state, and local recognition, but more importantly, she's built a reputation for authenticity and relentless follow through. She's committed to one simple idea: if you are willing to serve this country better be willing to serve you when you come home. Katie, welcome to the show.
Thanks. Thanks for having me. I'm excited to be here.
I'm glad to have you. So before we go further, for people who may not be familiar, what does 5051 actually stand for? Where did the name come from? And what does it signal about the mission and strategy of the organization? And more broadly, what gap did you see that made you believe that 5051 veterans needed to exist in the first place?
Okay, so we'll start with the first part of that. So 50, because it's a multifaceted question. 5051 is 50 states, 50 capitals, one day. And so the premise was we were going to protest around the country at the capitals, on one day as a show of unity. And what I saw, right, is veterans have a unique space in many movements. But in 2020, I had done this. I had gathered women veterans around the country to stand together against MST to get policy changed. And so I knew it was a unique time and a space was needed to gather veteran voices. And so I just pitched the idea of, hey, every state's doing their own thing. The veterans have their own space to strategize because 5051 is not an organization. It's very decentralized and veterans don't work well in decentralized anything. We need a chain of commands. You need to give me a list of things to do to feel productive. And so when I said decentralization is not going to work in the veteran community, we need our own space to strategize with each other, with our spouses, with our own community. And so here we are, a year later.
Well, that's awesome. Yeah, as a veteran, I know exactly what that's like I retired last year and I have struggled with the lack of structure now. So it's good to know that 5051 Veterans is out there because the structure, and I'll say after joining it, it was nice to have other veterans to talk to who are kind of in that same space um, with regards to politics as me. Having that shared reality definitely helped further my understanding of what's going on. Glad that it's there, and thank you for your leadership in that. You've worn the uniform, and You're leading a national veterans organization. So as a advocate myself, right? So I know that there's a point at which you decide, you know what, there's a hole in the dam that I need to fill because it's leaking, and if I don't fill it, it's going to break. What was that point for you? Where did you feel or realize that advocacy was not optional?
Man. So somebody asked me this question about a year ago, what got you into advocacy? And to be honest, I got sober, and this year will be my 14th year sober. And they told me I had to do service to others, right? And so I have a really weird birth story for another time, but I started working in the homeless veteran community. And I realized that there was a gap between the veteran themselves and trying to talk to big government, small government, state government, NGOs, all of these 501s. And so I pretended to be homeless and kind of went through the system. And that's how it led into my advocacy for over a decade of there is a gap to be filled where veterans are being served by a community that doesn't understand how we work or how we communicate. And so having veterans advocate for themselves is in our own best interest.
That is wow. That's not an answer that I expected. Um, so tell me more about you say that you pretended to be homeless to go through the process and the system. And
Yep.
on Crayon Box Politics, we like to look at the process and the system and why it's not working.
Yeah.
What did you find as you were going through that system that was broken with regards to assisting veterans and helping veterans?
It's actually like what radicalized me because people ask me often, like, what radicalized you? And it was this whole thing. I started working in homeless shelters, like devoting a lot of my time to really understand homeless culture, what services were out there, and things of that nature. And it didn't make sense. And I am autistic and I like looking at systems. And so when a system doesn't make sense to me, then I need to live in the system to kind of pick it apart to understand it. And what I realized, and I don't know, I will speak to Jacksonville, Florida uniquely. Jacksonville, Florida has one nonprofit in it that doles out the funding for HUD-VASH. And it is one large nonprofit here in the city that owns that grant money. And so what happens is a homeless veteran goes into a shelter and then they are shuffled between all of these different 501(c)(3)s that each do their own niche to fill their grant funding without actually solving the problem. And so what I ended up doing and what radicalized me is I ended up taking homeless veterans off the street into my own home one by one and teaching them job skills and financial literacy and getting them a job and getting them an apartment and just kind of rinse and repeat. And I got called to the city. My mentor here in the city of Jacksonville asked me to meet her at City Hall. And so I did. And I got a very stern talking to about how I was messing up people's grant money because they were not going to meet their numbers.
Wow.
And
So it's
that's when I
about the money.
realized. That's when I realized, right? I have a bone to pick with most nonprofits in existence. Yeah. Homelessness is profitable. It's profitable. When CEOs are making $500,000 a year in the nonprofit world and the social issue is actually not being solved, why are we giving them money?
It's a good question.
I did
That's a
a
really good question.
immense amount of research into Jacksonville because I'm a native here and we're such a large veteran and military community. Uh, the one nonprofit, because I don't want to be sued, the one nonprofit received $43 million over a 10-year period. I'm in construction. Okay, that's what I do. If you give me $43 million, I will solve it tomorrow. I will solve that problem. And it's not the Housing First initiative that we initially thought it was. There's been a lot of research into that. But that's the problem is people are making a profit off of social issues, especially veteran endemic social issues, veteran suicide, veteran homelessness, veteran, like trying to transition. People are becoming wealthy off of this. And that's the problem.
So where are the other veterans organizations like IAVA and the VFW? Where are those organizations when it comes to helping to resolve these issues?
They do good work. Like I will never speak illy of the big five. Okay. And so that's the IADA, VFW, the Legion, DAV. And they have tried to solve this issue generationally, as we've seen, right? But if you think of the big five, I think of them as our lobbyists. That's their job. They're the five biggest veteran nonprofits in the country. They have the lobbying power that smaller nonprofits do not. Also, they don't involve themselves in HUD-VASH money.
Why not?
I think that there's a fiduciary responsibility when you're taking on federal grant money that they just don't.
They don't want to touch that.
It's one of the reasons we don't take money, right? Like 50,
Mhm.
51 bats, we don't accept any money. Um, I I have never accepted one penny over the 10 years I've been doing this because money makes things weird.
So you brought it up. What is 5051 Veterans doing that is different than what you call the Big Five is doing? I know it's a smaller organization,
It is.
but it still is a national organization. So what is it doing differently?
We can take on issues that they can't. And what I mean by that is if you look at like the Legion, they're federally mandated into existence, right? They're chartered. They're federally chartered. So they can't pick niche issues because then they can be dechartered. Whereas we, the veteran community, I want to talk about trans votes. I want to talk about MST openly. I want to talk about DEI. And there's a large swath of the veteran population that wants to do that. And so if you think of the Big Five as being able to being taken down, that's why. And that's why we exist, is we can speak out on issues that they can't. But you have seen them speak out recently, which I've been very proud of
Yeah,
them.
I have seen a lot of that. I'll say that since I joined the group, I noticed that there within 5051 there was a lot of talk that I didn't expect to see, like discussion about trans veterans
Oh, yeah.
and MST.
Yep.
Um, my former co-host on the show, Avery, he is a transgender veteran, and he had to take a step back because of all of the things that are going on. And it doesn't help that he lives in a state that is not trans friendly whatsoever. And so as a result, he had to take that step back. And between the two of us, we had spent a lot of time kind of looking at who was in the space. You know, we actually helped found Sparta. I don't know if you're tracking that. We helped found that organization. And I mean, it's taken off, but it went silent after the election for a good clip of time. And so to be able to walk into 5051 vets and see the conversation popping up there, I was completely shocked and very happy about that fact. So
Yeah. Why you were shocked.
because so I'm a retired Marine, and within my Marine Corps circle, the mentality is very conservative, right? Like I'll be honest with you. When I was younger, I was very anti-trans, and it wasn't the fact that I was anti-trans in like as a people. It was anti-trans service because I just didn't understand how that fit into the realm of things. And it wasn't until I met people like Avery that it actually helped to solidify my understanding of the situation and of the dynamic that exists for transgender service members and transgender Americans. So for me, it was shocking to see because I hadn't seen that type of conversation in like the general circles when it came to how to rally against the administration and the way that they were doing things. So, like I said, it was less of a shock and more of a surprise, a pleasant surprise, if that makes sense.
That makes me happy, right? Because I think it feeds into the stereotype of veterans, right? It's like you fed into the own stereotype of our own community,
Hmm.
is that we are all transphobic, we're all conservative MAGA, um, and we all have zero sense of humanity, right? Is
Hmm.
that's like the general public's consensus of the veteran community until they find groups like ours, and then they're like, "Oh shit."
There's actually depth.
Yeah, right? And I think that that stereotype is perpetuated for a reason. If you look at voting numbers, right? Because I'm a nerd, I know you're a nerd like I'm a nerd. 35% of veterans voted Democrat.
See, that's a
So
number I hadn't found yet. That's wow, and that's a significant number.
it
Wow.
is. And so I always tell people, right, because I study social movements and that 3.5% rule. Veterans make up 6.2% of the population. If we only need 3.5% of the population, which is around 11 million, if we can convince half of the veteran population to come out, that's a lot of veterans in the streets, right? And in theory, we only need 15%.
And we've got 35% that are voting. Oh, wow. That's a good
Not a
point. And that kind of like that ties my what the question I was going to ask is the whole um, discussion around the veteran community being politically unified, which I know that it's not. And you kind of just dispelled the myth. So I mean that's wow. I did not know that number. That's great. From your perspective, and I brought this up in the group in a couple of times last week, but um, I was trying to find when they passed the Save Act last week, I was trying to find that bill and I couldn't find it for the life of me because every time I went to look, the numbers that I got would tie me into a veterans specific bill that was tied to accessibility for veterans and in establishing an accessibility council. Um, and through research and digging and trying to understand what was going on, I discovered that the Republicans in the House had stripped that bill, which had been passed by the Senate on a bipartisan basis, and replaced the wording with the wording of the Save Act. What message does that send to the veteran community when they do things like that?
That our voices don't count, right? If you look at accessibility in and of itself for active duty, specifically for voting, I was overseas during an election. I have voted in every election, and it was difficult. It's difficult for male spouses. It's difficult for adult children that live. But if we are going to strip pathways to voting for active duty, then fuck the women, right? Right? Because Republicans historically, okay, I'm gonna out myself real quick. I'm a registered Republican. I have been a registered Republican my entire life. I have seen the party use veterans as props, active duty as props my entire life. I'm a generational veteran. I'm a fifth generation veteran of my family. Yet at every chance they can, they strip us of accessibility to medical access, to voting, to healthcare, to housing, to
Mhm.
education. It's the Republican way, my friend.
It does seem like our specific section of the population tends to get used for positioning, so to speak, from both sides, and it's almost like we're a political pawn when this game is played. Um,
Mhm.
with that being said, and to your comment about the 35%, what what is preventing veterans from standing up and saying, you know what, we've had enough. We're going to make our voice heard because things need to change.
It's kind of a loaded question. And people don't understand why that's a loaded question. If you were to see 6.2% of the population stand up and go out into the street tomorrow and everybody was a veteran, do you think it would create some form of hysteria?
That I do. I really do. I think it would absolutely create panic, if not with the administration, at least with the people who are watching it happen.
I think that there is a lot of veterans within our community that continue to vote against their own best interest because they live in a different reality than we do.
How do
And
you mean?
what I mean by that is um a BIPOC woman telling me that she doesn't believe in DEI in the military. That's what I mean. Because that lives in our community, right?
Mhm.
There are women out there that are like, man, DEI is bad. And I'm like, you're the E in the I.
Right.
And it's me trying to explain to veterans about I watched all the hearings. I watched the one last week with Doug Collins. I watch every Veterans Affairs hearing. I think it's important for us to. And when they're talking about means testing and cutting disability and deleting these things, and you still have a very large swath of our population, of our community that's like, it's not going to happen.
Mhm.
It's
Yeah,
not going to.
I had before I got out, I had seen a lot of this stuff coming out from Republicans, and I would send this on to my fellow, I guess you could say them, my compatriots, the people I worked with, and I would always get the response of, "Yeah, that won't happen."
But it does, right?
It
And
is. Like, it is happening.
I
Um,
have a lot, living in Florida, right? I live in a dystopian nightmare, so everybody around me is a Republican and mostly DECA, especially within the veteran community. And when I sit on the Veterans Council and I tell them, like, hey, we should probably pay attention to this, and they're like, no, we're good. I'm like, oh, okay, cool, 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 cool.
so how do we change that dynamic? Like, what is it gonna take for veterans to see what
Losing their
is really going on?
losing their privilege. That is what it's going to take.
That's a tough pill to swallow.
It's the truth. When I in our Facebook group, right?
Mhm.
I don't talk a lot in there. But when when I do, it's usually because I'm arguing with somebody. And I got in I got in an argument with a fellow female vet over saying veterans are privileged. We are the most privileged group in America. And until we realize that and we utilize our privilege to benefit those around us, the civilians we, took an oath to protect, nothing is going to change. Nothing. Because you have veterans that haven't lost anything, that think their disability is always going to be there, that the VA home loan is always going to be there, that the GI Bill is always going to be funded, that we're always going to have the VA, that every generation is going to have that. And I am of the mindset the Vietnam era vets, my father's generation, fought for every benefit I had. The PTSD clinic I went through, they fought for that. MST, like counseling I went through, they fought for that. The women did. The GI Bill post 9/11, they fought for that for us. So it's my job. It's my job to fight for the next generation. But what's happening is you have a lot of dickheads in our generation that's willing to give up everything, including their own benefits, to fuck the next person. And I don't know, man. I don't know what it's going to take. I think what it's going to take is veterans losing their privilege, our benefits going away, VA hospitals closing, and shit going drastically awry for most of the veteran population to care.
So for me, I live in Jacksonville, North Carolina, or in that region. So it's funny every time I see you talking about Jacksonville, my first thought is, oh, Jacksonville, North Carolina. But over here, I've had some issues with the VA. Getting into the VA. I mean, just getting an appointment, I gotta wait 6 months before I can actually be seen. And then it's a phone call to find out why I want to be seen the day before I'm supposed to be seen to determine if I'm going to be seen or not. And I have asked for community care just because my primary care is also a certified VA community care doctor. Haven't gotten it because I have to be seen in order to. Long story. Do you think that community care is the answer to the subpar VA care that we're getting today, or do you think that that's probably one of those things that's going to hurt us in the long run?
I think any money that goes out of the VA system hurts the VA system. I mean, do you know why community care was created in the first place?
I don't.
Okay, so I'm going to show you the efficacy real quick of community care ain't shit. Community care was created when veterans were killing themselves in the parking lots of VAs. My own battle buddy started this trend in Phoenix. And so the government said, it's real bad luck. We can't have veterans killing themselves in VA parking lots. We got to do something. Mental health is it, right? So they created community care because there were such long lines at mental health clinics at VAs. So let's come to today. 18 veterans shot themselves last year in VAs. Did it work?
Clearly, it didn't.
No. Now we're giving money to private entities outside of the VA. Now we're losing funding because when you look at the funding bill, right, like the Veterans Benefits Administration, and then you have the Veterans Health Administration, right, under the VA, and most people don't understand that. The Veterans Health Administration only gets such a big bucket of money. And if we're sending money outside of the VA to community care, then how are we ever going to hire and fully staff the VA for it to be good?
So that's a valid point, but what do you say to the counter argument that is why put money in the Veterans Health Administration when we can divert that money to private organizations, private professionals that are far better equipped to handle those situations, whereas the government running a mental health or even a healthcare facility is counterintuitive to the way that American healthcare is understood to exist.
The VA mental health care system's failing. I'm not an advocate for it. I'm not saying it's great. Um, I think that there has to be some revisions in VA mental health care. One of the things I believe is that we need to go outside of evidence-based therapies that are offered at the VA. And what I mean by that is a friend of mine, Crystal Romero, she got the law passed in Arizona this past year in 2025 for psychedelics to be offered through the state VA system. But I think that we have an overburdened healthcare system in America as is, and not enough mental health care professionals. Why? Because of burnout and pay. And if we are overburdening the American mental health care system, then are veterans taking precedence over civilians for those appointments now? Is our
Probably not.
mental health more important, less important, or equally? I think it's equally important. And so I think fully staffing the VA, which I think the VA has more specialized care than the American healthcare system, especially when it comes to CPTSD, PTSD, TBI, and all of the unique illnesses that veterans encounter. And so I think if we can fully fund the VA and keep the money there, but fully staff it, then it's a win-win on both. It's a win on the American healthcare system, and it's a win on the VA healthcare system.
Yeah, I guess I would have to attribute my question to the privilege word again, because I live in an area that is predominantly veteran, predominantly active duty. And so the access to community care with it, the private system that has that experience here is different than, say, if I were to go to the Midwest where there are no military bases. And so that would be a different, that's a good point. Um,
I think that there is a caveat though that somebody, because you've seen the smoke pit, you know, we do it. I was talking to a candidate in Idaho, District 1, and where she lives, their closest VA is 6 hours.
and
So
that's
there has,
problematic too.
you know what I'm saying? So
Yeah.
there has to be some form of equity across the board where we're not funneling money out of the VA where it could possibly stay if we hire more people. Like I'll use like I'm a part of the Southeast Florida or Northeast Florida VA system, right? And all of our big stuff is in Gainesville. Um, but if we as Jacksonville, right, we have 196,000 veterans in Duval County. We're one of the largest concentrations in the country. I don't think that any zero money should be leaving the VA healthcare system in Jacksonville, Florida. I think that we need to fully fund and staff the VA here. Now, in rural Idaho, does it make sense for vouchers to go into community care if there's a veteran that needs specialized care that they can't drive the 6 hours? Yeah. 100%. So I think that there's some happy medium that needs to be done there, but there is a large study. A friend of mine has been working on privatization of the VA and community care for since it started. Actually, they've been researching, and more money leaves the VA than stays in it with community care.
Wow. That's a data point I was not aware of. That's wow. So this is the reason why I bring people like you onto the show so that I can learn about these things. Because there's so much going on. If you could be, um, congressman, senator, president, justice, all in one for a day, and you
Mhm.
could do one reform in order to move the mark for veterans, what would it be and why?
I would do it for active duty because then it would affect veterans later. I would hold accountable everybody for MST and the cover up and the epidemic. Every commander, every official that knows, everybody that has swept it under the rug, everybody that retired with full benefits and pay. Um, I would undo that injustice that has been happening since the founding of our military.
That is that is quite a reform. And to be fair, one that I 100% agree with. I did I did time as an equal opportunity representative, and I mean the number of times I had victims come to me, just because I was the EO in the face, and I had to be like, I'm not the right person. Don't tell me anything. Go talk to this person. Um, the fact that that the current administration under the gentleman that I like to call Keg's Breath, um, he's basically done away with that with the EO program. I haven't seen him getting rid of the sexual assault program, but I don't know if that's
It's
because I
gone.
just haven't been look. It's gone.
It's gone.
Do you think that the changes that he is making to the department are reversible in the near term?
No, no. And I'll tell you why. Um, I'm gonna get real for a sec. I'm gonna get real, and you're about to learn some in-depth shit about MST. More men are sexually assaulted in the military than women. Okay. Just on numbers. People don't realize that. They don't say it enough. More men are sexually assaulted than women in the military. Women have always taken on this burden, right? We've always like been like, oh, it's a women's issue. But it's not a women's issue. And the military has treated it as a women's issue since it's bit like the first testimony, it was in the 70s. Diana Danis is the godmother of the MST movement and one of my mentors. MST has been talked about for decades. We integrated women in World War II with WAC, with the Women Army Corps. And then women have only made it to 17% of the military today. So when we can say that sexual assault is a women's issue, then we don't really have to face it, right?
Mhm.
And then the culture of the military is toxic and masculine. It's the purest form of toxic masculinity. Um, I still today, right? Like I work in construction. So I went from like one male dominated environment to another male dominated environment. And I say things in the construction world that even the men are like, yikes. And I know it would fly in the motor pool. Like as long
Right.
as I said it in motor pool, it's good. But it's a culture, right? And so when you have someone at the top who has NDAs for sexual assault, when you have a commander in chief who has been credibly accused of sexual assault and is now a pedophile, and we know that. And you have all of these people in positions of power, and now you have the Secretary of the Navy, who's a businessman. He's not even in the military. You have just emboldened an entire generation of young men in the military who are going to think that that is okay. And so if he was to leave tomorrow and we put sharp reps back, is it going to fix it? No, because you have all of these young men that firmly believe that, women should just not be able to anonymously report, or women should just not be in the military. Do you know how many times I've been told that in the last year by
Probably more
men?
than I have been told, and I've been told that quite a bit.
So there was a culture shift in 2020. Vanessa Guillen was brutally murdered on 410, and women veterans around the country were pissed. And I haphazardly stood up a movement. I just wanted to protest. Everybody was protesting. So I was like, women veterans should protest. And before I knew it, I was like leading a national movement of women veterans. And I was like, oh shit, this is like bigger. Like, I just wanted to go to Fort Hood and yell at people, right? Like, because I'm a
Mhm.
victim of Hood. And so I was going to go publicly name my rapist and like at the gate and all of that. And it was just going to be like healing. We're going to do some women energy shit. And before I knew it, like we had stood up 29 cities, including Hong Kong, ST survivor led protests, talking about women in the military and MST. And I thought in 2020 that we were going to get movement. It was in 2021 in the NDAA that we got part of the Vanessa Guillen Act passed. But it all went away with Pete Hegseth. So every protection we fought for was deleted due to DEI. So everything we fought for, generations, I stood with 5 generations of women's stories that I had heard. They had called, they had told me women in Vietnam getting locked in boxes in the ground, like the nurses, they were used as sex slaves, and hearing those stories to my own story to women that were still on active duty and hearing their stories and it's still being endured. And it's like, yes, we finally got some form of relief for this administration to be like. So
Within a
everything,
matter of 6 months, not even.
yeah. So everything we fought for since the 40s has been successfully undone. So no, I don't think that it's going to be a quick fix.
So how do we fix that and make it a permanent fix?
That we get rid of bad leadership. Accountability is number one, right?
Mhm.
Is I am a firm believer that if you are a commander that ever had an MST file on your desk and you did not pass it forward to JAG, you need to be kicked out of the fucking military tomorrow. You do not have that power. You're not an investigator. You need to push that forward to CID or, any whatever branch you're in, your investigative department. Like, you shouldn't be able to have that power. And if you are not passing those files because the name on the file is your buddy or your first sergeant or your XO or your S2, like you should be in Leavenworth with the rest of them.
Yeah, I can't count the number of times I watched a commander take an individual who had a claim and just move them to a different unit and wipe their hands of it as if nothing had happened. Um,
That's the
and
norm.
it right, it is absolutely the norm. And it seems like that was one of those institutional things where the idea of not rocking the boat, so to speak, was more important to commanders than actually pursuing the predator. I know that as a sergeant myself, I had one of my Marines come to me and brought up the essay. And I mean, I'll be honest with you, I went high into the right. I was like, "What's his name? Where's he at? Let me get him." And I had to get pulled back because I was going to violate some of the rules that made it hard for her to actually get the justice that she deserved. Because I was just so heated. Tough question, and I'm going to ask it because it's a question that needs to be addressed. But don't think that I fall in line of this group. What do
Yeah.
you say to the group of people that make an argument of when it comes to essay, there tends to be this guilty until proven innocent mentality versus innocent until proven guilty mentality?
Less than 1% of reports are false. Less than 1%. I'll put it this way. This is a better way to put it. Every woman I know, every woman I served with, every woman I have met after the military has a story. I know one rapist, one. The math ain't math. All of the men I have talked to, none of them know rapists. But I found out my first duty station was in Korea. And when I was doing all of the work in 2020, I had seven females that I served with reach out to me. We were all raped by the same person. And one has two children by him. Ended up pregnant with twins. Fun reminder, huh? So you're not guilty until proven innocent in the military. Quite the opposite. And I will share my own story. So I was sexually assaulted 3 times in 8 years. And I lost trust in the system after the first one when I went to a court martial with a rape kit and a witness. I got slapped on the wrist. That's the reality of the justice system. I got a call last month from a young female soldier in Fort Hood, of all places, or Fort Cavanos, I think that's what they call it today. Going through the same thing that Vanessa Guillen went through 6 years ago. Got my number through an advocate friend. In the military and in the VA, the burden is on the woman. It is on the victim. I won't say woman, I will say victim. And the burden of the VA, man, I went all the way to a court martial. All of my stuff is in my record. I had to call that witness 10 years later and ask him for a battle buddy letter for the VA.
That is, you had to live it again.
I had to call him and be like, "Hey, Joey, how's life? Remember 10 years ago? You think you can write me an email about that so I can give it to the VA?" And on top of that, men, this is going to shock you because whenever I say this, people are like, "What?" Men cannot file for MST at the VA.
Wait, what?
You can get help, you can get counseling, you can do all that. You're not getting compensation. They classify it as hazing, not sexual assault.
One more thing that I've learned. That's Wow. I have no words right now.
Yeah.
What do we tell the young women, the young men, um, the victims uh, of of these heinous crimes? What do we tell them about continuing to serve? Like, how do we say it's okay to bring this up and make it known? Because that's the only way you're going to get justice, when everything in front of them says if you bring it up you will get punished. Everything in front of them says that there's nothing on the books that will prevent them, the victim, from being punished before the perpetrator gets punished. What do we tell them? Like, how do we keep them believing in the system if the system is broken?
I'm a massive fan of the public finding out, right? So, like during Vanessa Guillen, when you had a large swath of women on TikTok, young women talking about being sexually assaulted in the military, I think that is important. Telling the public, reaching out to women veteran groups around the country, reaching out to veteran groups in general. We all talk to each other, especially within the MST community. We all work hand in hand with each other. So generally how it works is that young female soldier who got my number through somebody I met 6 years ago, to talk to me about the situation that was happening on Fort Hood. My next phone call was to a lawyer who deals with these type of things, who's a civilian veteran, now a
Yeah.
civilian that fights the military. And so there is hope and there is help. I think that's the biggest message to get out there. Is there's female vets, there's male vets, there's trans vets. We're all out here fighting for you. All you have to do is look, right? Just Google MST advocates. Google, and message that person on TikTok, message them on Facebook, Insta. We constantly check it, because if you reach out to me, I'm going to answer. If you reach out to Lindsay Knapp, Lindsay Church, Lucy Del Augio, you reach out to any of us that are in the MST space, we're damn sure going to help you. And we're damn sure going to call each other to find out like who knows what and who can do what. I think the large swath of high ranking officials that are retiring concerns me. Um, because when you have a bunch of young soldiers that are scared and don't and know that the system's broken and the good people are leaving, what do you tell them? Hang in there. Hang in there, champ. We have 3 more years, and then we may get a new president. You may get a new commander in chief. You may get a new SecDef. Do people have 3 years?
Not, yeah, no.
You know? I mean, because we platformed that National Guard member in the smoke pit one night. We platformed a National Guard member that's deployed in DC, and we obscured his identity, because the veteran community, we wanted to grill him, number one. And B, we wanted to give him a chance to talk to the civilian population of like,
Mhm.
what are you doing in DC? What are your orders? All of this and stuff like that. When you have 18-year-old kids that are not sure why they're deployed in the nation's capital, and then their like commanding officer isn't really sure, but then you also have JAG that's not really sure if it's legal, and then you have a SecDef that's like, we're gonna do whatever I say. Like, it's not the military
Mhm.
I served in. It's not the military you served in. It's not the military my father, my grandfather, my great-grandfather served in. I'm not sure what to tell the young soldier today. Wait it out?
Yeah, I would say that's one of the reasons that I have kind of stepped away from the military. I got out and kind of cut ties with everyone that I used to work with that was in. And it was more along the lines of I was watching things. It was almost like it was a train wreck in slow motion. And it still continues to be a train wreck in slow motion. And I had to step away because I couldn't fathom why anyone would want to continue to serve. I mean, it's just there the mission is not the same as the mission that you and I had while we were in. Um, I'm trying not to go off on tangents because I've been told that when I bring a guest in, I tend to talk a lot.
You're good. I don't give a shit. Go
um,
on your tangent. I'm here for it.
so I mean, it's one of those things. But my I guess my next thing to you is we've seen a lot of veterans going up to DC.
Yep.
Um, And I don't know if you're aware of the Army veteran who goes by the handle of Angry Ginger.
Yeah. Hmm.
Um, he was up in DC. I think he's back now because he took a little bit of time over to Minnesota. But um,
Jolly.
yeah, Jolly. When he was it the Angry Ginger? No, the Angry Ginger is a bar here. I'm sorry. Jolly
Yeah.
Good Ginger. There we go. Um,
You have
so
Jolly
he,
Good Ginger, you have US
mhm,
MC Angry Bat, you have the whole clan.
Gunny
Yeah.
speaks out.
Yeah, yeah.
But they were actively pursuing, or not pursuing, but following and kind of harassing the National Guard troops as they were wandering around DC. Um, for me, that personally, as I was watching it, felt like we're targeting the wrong people. Because, like you said, they're 18-year-olds. They're there because they're told to be there, and if they didn't go, what would happen? So I struggle with the whole holding, like grilling them, specifically just because of the fact that they're and I know this is not an excuse, but they're following orders. Um,
Well, that gentleman or a soldier, he one of the reasons he asked to come on, like he reached out to me personally on my personal Facebook, and sent me a message and started that conversation, was of the harassment by veterans. And so he and I had a conversation, and then we had a phone call, and then I said, "Yeah, let me platform you. We'll have this conversation out in the open for everybody to hear it, right?" And we have, and you've seen, we have veterans all over the country in our group, and one of our veterans is in Memphis, and National Guard is in Memphis, and we were kind of strategizing of like, how do we talk to the National Guard as veterans of like, hey man, remember your oath. Like, you have that weird ass conversation with somebody. And so I got out as an E6 and I thought NCO to NCO, like let's have a chat. No, it was the E4 mafia that you need to go holler at. And most of the E4 mafia we have found across the country doesn't want to be there, right? So you're harassing people that are trying to make a living. And some of these people, like that soldiers from West Virginia, there's not a lot of opportunity in West Virginia for money. So one of the opportunities is the National Guard. So he had only joined like 9 months prior. So he joins, the election happens, and then he gets sent to DC. Like he didn't sign up for that,
mhm.
but he also has to pay bills, right? So should we be out there yelling at those kids? We're adults, right? And we forget this, right? Because we're vets. So we're like, oh, they're military. We're military. Like, we're one. No, we're
Right.
fucking adults. Like, these are kids. I remember Baby Privates. Baby Private Katie was dumb as shit, right? And so, yeah, it's the following orders thing, but it's also like, do you really want them to leave and like not be able to feed their family?
Hmm.
Like, why are civilians out here yelling at 18-year-old kids that are trying to survive? We're all trying to survive this shit, right? Like all of us, especially then. And um, although I will never speak illy of the National Guard, we all know that there is a hierarchy within the military and how we look at each other, right? Like, so you're a Marine,
Hmm.
and then we have the Army,
Yep.
right? And then we have the Navy,
Hmm.
and then we have the Air Force. And then we have the Guard and the Reserves.
You left out the Space Force.
We don't count them. They're just 'cause none of us know what the fuck they do. Like, they exist, but we're not sure. And I was taught, like, National Guard is probably the most least trained out of all of us.
Hmm.
And you have 18-year-old kids that are the least trained in a city they're not from, dealing with a situation they're not used to, not sure why they're there, and you're giving them weapons. Agitating them is probably not your best bet, right? Just leave them alone. They're not there. We found out in that live, right, of the snippet of like what they were doing. Cause I was like, what are your orders? Like, what are you doing all day? Oh, we're just walking around. Are you assisting ICE? No. Okay. Are you harassing anybody? No, we're just kind of walking around.
Police calling.
Sounds like detail to me,
Right.
right? Like your whole company got put on detail. Like, and so when you have veterans, civilians out here yelling at them, they're like, we're just trying to pick up trash and cut like the grass with scissors because the first sergeant said so, right?
Mhm.
Like,
Base beautification detail. That's what that was.
right. And so, yeah, I had that problem too, right? Because I wanted to go talk shit, right? Because I talk shit to cops. That's me as a human. And so when I went up to DC in November, I was there for 11/22, and I wanted to go find some National Guard to go talk to them. I decided against it, right? Like, because we had done that smoke pit, and I was like, oh man, like, let's just leave these guys alone. Let's see if we can give them any resources because it was after the two soldiers were killed. And so then we just focused on sending pizza and, yeah, like, handing them candy when you can, because it's weird, the National Guard can't accept food. We got told that by 3 different units, and so if you can slide them some candy on the down low, they'd appreciate it. We just have to let them know that we're here, right?
Mhm.
Is that we know, like, they're in an impossible situation. Right? Like, you're in the military, people think like, the civilian population tends to think, like, you could just get out of the military tomorrow, and that is not how that shit works. The only time I've ever seen somebody chaptered out within 48 hours, it was for a very good reason. And they, like, got sent home within 48 hours. Otherwise, chaptering somebody out of the military takes 30, 60, 90 days, depending on the chapter, depending on going to JAG, depending on all of these things, and you
Mhm.
can't just be like, I quit and go home. Like, you signed a contract with the federal government. Like, you can't just be like, so one of the things that we have been pushing for is about face. They have this thing that they've been pushing. It's a campaign called the right to refuse. Because m- moral injury, you know that term?
Yes.
Okay. So with how we fight today, there's a lot more moral injury happening than like I served from '07 to 2014. So it was a thing, but it wasn't found out till later. Right. Is that there should be the right to refuse certain orders within the military based on morals.
And we can see how that would turn out, though. I mean, from I I was an E7 when I got out, and I can tell you that I've had kids walk up to me and tell me, again, while I was a sergeant in the same unit that I had that victim come to me. I had another Marine come to me and say, "I hope I don't ever get deployed because I don't want to deploy to combat." And my first reaction was, "Well, then why the hell did you join?" And it immediately tainted that Marine's image in my eyes as their leader, because immediately it was, this Marine is not here for the right reasons.
What are the
Um,
right reasons?
Putting me on the spot. So I mean, at the time, right, and even now, I would say that the right reasons are to protect and defend the the constitutional rights of the United Nations, not United Nations, United States, right? Like our purpose is to defend against all. I'm going to be cheesy here, but all enemies, foreign and domestic,
What if I
right?
told
Like,
you that not everybody joined the military to be gung ho Marine Army soldier like I did? I joined for that reason, right? And to like family legacy. There's a lot of people that join the military because they wanted to get out of poverty and they could give a fuck less about the Constitution. What if I told you that? I didn't learn that until the last year of my life.
so as a recruiter, I would believe you, right? Because I spent 3 years serving as a recruiter in Stockton, California, and I helped kids get themselves out of poverty situations. I mean, a lot of the kids that I got into the Marine Corps had parents who were undocumented.
Yep.
And before was a recruiter, I was completely against undocumented immigrants whatsoever. Like, they shouldn't be in the United States. But then I started to realize that it's more nuanced than that. And as a recruiter, I realized, oh, this is a really big deal. Like we have members of the military serving whose parents are not citizens, but their kids are outstanding Americans. So I believe you on that as a driving force for why they joined the military. I mean, I joined the Marines in 2004 with the plan of doing 4 years and bouncing because I wanted the college. And 20 years later, 2024, here we are. I'm old and retired and trying to figure out what happened. So I grant you, yes, that's probably a driving force, but to stay in the Marine Corps, or even just to choose the Marines over any different branch, right? Like I can see people going towards the Army as that route, because the Army is large, it has a lot of different functions, and you can easily um, pull yourself out of poverty and get the skills that you need to be successful in life. Whereas the Marine Corps is smaller, and it doesn't matter what your job is, you're going to combat if there's combat. And so that was my mentality as a sergeant. And that was kind of my mentality as a gunny too. If you're in the Marine Corps, expect to deploy, expect to go to a combat zone and be prepared for it. And don't say, I don't ever want to do it. Cause at that point, you're no longer part of the unit. Now you're becoming someone that I have to think twice about whether or not I can bring you into a scenario like combat and trust you.
What if the recruiter told them that they were not going to go to combat?
The number of times I've heard the line, so you switched it on me. It's a good job. I would say that the number of times I've heard the story of, oh, my recruiter lied to me, before I went in, and before I became a recruiter and after I became a recruiter. I can honestly say that none of the Marines that I put in can tell you that I lied to them about what they were doing. Matter of fact, I was blatantly honest and almost brutally honest with them about everything, including what it was that a grunt does on the daily, um, which is not going out and fighting, right? But that is, I would say, recruiting is one of those things that we have to fix,
We
right?
have predatory recruiting practices.
Absolutely. Absolutely. And I wouldn't say that it's the recruiter's fault. I would say that it is you have to have X number of numbers
Yeah.
before you can go home. And oh, by the way, if you don't get these numbers at the end of the month, you're going to spend a weekend, or every single weekend the next month, dealing with some dickhead master gunnery sergeant, or EAE9, that's going to come down on you and tell you that you're a piece of shit because you didn't get the contracts that you were supposed to get the last month. So
Yeah, I think it's a vicious cycle, right? Like on that end, right on your end of like, oh, you have this gunny that's coming down, and he's a dick, and I have to meet my numbers. And so now though, and I believe you when you say that you did not lie to anybody and you were a good recruiter. I do. I believe that in my soul. But I also know that when pressure builds up like that, recruiters do shit and say shit that is completely false and make promises that can't be kept, right? And I think the biggest evidence of that is deported veterans, right? Is that we have these predatory practices within immigrant communities, and we have for a very long time. And we promise citizenship, and we promise, like you can get citizenship, and then, like you can sponsor your parents to get citizenship, and then you're all going to be safe and you're going to serve your country. And then
mhm.
um, they get out without citizenship and now they're deported.
Well, to be fair, there was a time where that promise was real, and
The promise is real, but the
well, it
system
got
is.
taken away during Trump 1.0. I mean, I had a kid who joined he joined the delayed entry program, and spent 2 years in the delayed entry program because he had a green card. And when Trump 1.0 happened and the policy changed to, if you have a green card, you're not getting in, we had to jump through hoops to get this kid through the process. And I thank my lucky stars that he made it in, because he's a phenomenal Marine. And he's an excellent leader, and now he's an excellent, an amazing father, right? Like he's doing the good things that I knew that he was able to do. He was actually my guide, longest running guide ever, and he was there for the kids who came and went. And he watched them come in, swear, and go to boot camp. Meanwhile, he's here watching them go to boot camp, wishing he could do the same. Um, so my argument there is, to be fair, there was a time where that promise was true.
No, it's always been true. Like, don't get me wrong. Like, I know that people. I have a friend in Dika who joined. He was from the Ivory Coast and became a citizen. I was there. I had a citizenship swearing in. We all were the whole platoon. It was cool, and we were super proud of him. So, like, I know it happens, but I also know that the system is broken. And there's been a piece of legislation introduced in the past 3 Congresses to fix it, and it's not passed. It's not even gained traction, which I don't understand. And what I mean by that is, yeah, you can become a citizen in the military. Sure, there's a way. Is it the same throughout every branch? No. And I you're an NCO. I was an NCO. What comes first? Mission.
Mission.
Mission first. So
Mhm.
sorry, you're not going to JAG. Sorry, you're not going, we have sergeant time training, or we're going to the field, or we're going on this FTX, or like, and then they get out thinking like, like it was all taken care of because there is a large swath of a certain generation of veteran that I have this conversation with that they're like, that's your own fault. What? Like, I got in a heated argument on TikTok one day with this gentleman on a panel about it. And he was like, well, it's their own fault they didn't do it. And he was Iraq. And he was like, I was in Iraq. And I was like, okay, cool, cool. Like, it's like we watch people become citizens. I'm like, yeah, I know. Me too. My point is that there are people that got out without citizenship. Well, that's their own fault. Okay, but they're being deported and they have Purple Hearts and Silver Stars and have done shit for our country. Too bad. I'm just like, Jesus Christ. And so this is what the bill says. And I think it's brilliant. I'm like, this is so smart. Is that in basic, they do the interview, the citizenship test, and do everything. And then after their first term of enlistment, they either re enlist and they're handed citizenship paperwork, or they get out and they get their DD 214 and citizenship paperwork. So it's just a streamlined process. It just makes sense.
And par for the course in the military. If it makes sense, it's ludicrous. Um, I make light of it just because of the fact that it would.
Like when we were like, how does this happen? And you'll get this, right?
Mhm.
Clearing, installation. You ever seen a JAG stamp? You
No,
ever had to clear JAG?
no, I haven't.
Yeah, me neither. Wouldn't it make sense to clear JAG?
You would think.
Yeah.
You would think. I mean, you got to clear the base library.
But you don't clear JAG? Who would know that you're not a citizen?
That's wow. I've never actually given that consideration, but also because, I mean, when I did change of stations, I did as little signatures as I could in order to get like
Like, which ones are abstracts? Let me go to A7.
do I actually need this one? So tell me a little bit about the smoke pit. I know I watched the first one last week that I've watched, and it was actually a really good conversation. Tell me about the mission of the smoke pit and what the purpose is.
So it's kind of morphed, right? And I want to kind of morph it back. And we were talking about it in our board meeting this week. So the smoke pit started on TikTok, and it was our group talking to each other openly on a live stream about policy. And it was a lot of fun, right? Because our group is so diverse. Like we have Republicans, we have Democrats, we have libertarians, we have our resident anarchist. And like it's such a diverse group of ideology. And so it started as a way to have conversations to kind of meet in the middle, right? And what I mean by that is I am a staunch capitalist. I'm a small business owner. And so we were talking about capitalism versus socialism, and we were having this online discussion, and people were commenting, and we are having a lot of fun with it. And what we met in the middle was a mixed market economy where the bottom two rungs of Maslow's hierarchy of needs are met by the federal government, and then everything else in society is met by the free market. And so that's how it started, right? Is like us having those conversations, and we were doing it pretty much every night. Like I was hopping on and different veterans, and we would have random people hop on and have conversations. And then one night, a candidate um, hopped on, and he was our test subject, and he's running in Tampa. And then it just kind of became, oh man, this is our opportunity as like veterans to kind of grill people that are running for office about their policy platform. Not only as it comes like to just veteran policy, right? Like I don't like I do care specifically about veterans, but I also want to make sure you're not a fascist. And and so he was our test subject. And it was interesting because that guy hopped on and it was 5 hours. We were live on TikTok for 5 hours with this guy. He was such a trooper. And we noticed in the comment section, a bunch of other candidates were like, "Oh, you interview candidates?" And we were like, no,
We
like
do now.
not particularly. Um, and so then it just kind of spiraled, right? And like a few people reached out and they were like, "Hey, like, can we do this?" And then I was like, "Yeah, sure." And so it just spiraled into us platforming candidates around the country. And I am a policy nerd, right?
Mhm.
And so I love it. It's like my happy place of like, oh, you have all these great ideas. How are you going to pay for it? Right? Like, how is your policy coming along on that issue? Like, yeah, like hopes and dreams get you nothing. And and that's what the smoke pit is that we invite candidates to come talk to the veteran community. We do research into their policy, into their backgrounds, and then ask them questions and like get their take on things. Like we've had some go awry because we're a non partisan group, right? So I invite everybody.
Mhm.
I'm like, all right, if you want to come, cool. And it sometimes goes off rails where
And
I
those, I
just
mean, those are some of the more productive conversations too, the ones that go off the rails, because you're able to kind of break things open that you wouldn't normally look into.
sometimes it just goes like completely awry where it's like, yeah, women should expect to be raped in the military. Like we had a candidate say that on live, and I went, oh, this went very odd. Like, and that night I think there was four of us on the panel, and three of us are MST survivors. And we all went, "Huh, interesting. The rest of this conversation is going to get very strange." Um, yeah, so that's what it is. And we were talking in the board meeting, we want to bring back one night a week where it's just veterans, like talking about current issues or yeah, like we need a space. I think that there is a want and a need of the civilian community to know what's going on in the veteran community right now. And so providing that and providing a space for veterans to kind of talk about Renee Good, Alex Preddy, the state of the VA, the dumpster fire of the government, like us kidnapping Venezuelan presidents or threatening to take Greenland, or like I just think that there's a need and a want for a space for veterans to talk about these things openly. And there's a want for the civilian world to kind of understand better where the veteran community is, because anytime I speak at a action or a protest or when I was in DC, a lot of people stop and they're like, "Oh, what do veterans think about what's going on?" And I'm like, "We think it's a dumpster fire just as much as you do. We're all confused."
Mhm.
So that's what it is. It's a lot of fun,
Well, good.
especially the one with Canada. It's a lot of fun.
And that happens every Thursday night?
Every Wednesday and every Saturday.
Every Wednesday and every Saturday? Okay.
Yep.
Um,
Tomorrow we have Justin Dews. He's running for Senate in North Carolina,
and what time is that occur on Wednesdays?
8 to 10.
And Saturdays 8 to 10 as well?
Mhm.
Okay.
Yeah. It's a lot of fun. You join the panel.
I
You
may
need
not be
to.
able to be there on Wednesday because I got school. Um, which seems to be like all the veterans in the group always have school. Everyone's talking about class. Which made me feel better about myself because I'm this 40-year-old going back to college and trying to get a degree because I put schooling last and career first. But
I got my degree late. 2021 when I got my degree. So you could do it. And the veterans in the room, right? I went to University of North Florida, so it's like a traditional college, like university.
mhm.
And so everybody's like 18 to 22, and then you like see the other random person, and you're like, "You have that? Yeah,
Mhm.
let's hang out."
Let's be friends.
We're automatic friends, right? Because I don't know if your school did this, but because of my TBI, they gave me a note taker, and they paid my note taker. The VA did all 4 years I was in college, and
Wow.
so yeah, and that thank God she was getting a degree in the same degree field I was. I felt really bad. But in one of my chemistry classes, I felt so out of place because there was a 12-year-old child. Yeah, first day of class, like professor was like, raise your hand. Raise her hand. This is a 12-year-old child. None of you talk to this individual. And I went, noted. So, like, stay far away from that person. And then, one day this other girl in the class, she goes, "Hey, you have a note taker?" And I was like, "Yeah." She goes, "Hey, I'm gonna be out on Friday. Can I get your notes?" And I was like, "Yeah, sure. I'll email them to you." I was like, "Well, what are you doing?" And she's like, "Oh, I'm graduating." I was like, "What?" And she was like, "High school." I was like, "I'm gonna have to talk to your mom." And she just kind of looks at me. I was like, "I'm an adult. I adult, right?"
Goodness. Yeah, I do one of the military schools, so it's one of the hybrid um type of schools. And it's all pretty much military in there. So it's kind of nice. I may have decided to do that for the purpose of not having to encounter 18, 19-year-olds in class. I can only imagine what it would be like in a group session where we've got a group project and I'm the oldest guy there. Um,
I tried to
okay,
opt
grandpa.
out. Like, like, and I think it was like my development class because, like I said, I work in construction, so my degree is in construction management, and so we had to develop a piece of land and like lay out a plat of like houses, and then like come up with design of the houses and build it in CAD and all of this. And it was, like, meant to be a group project, but I opted out. Like, I just went to the professor and I was like, "Can I do this by myself?" And she was like, "This is a group project. It's like the whole semester, like the whole class was this project." And I was like, "No, I'm good. I'm good."
This isn't something yeah. Well, it's been awesome. The conversation has been great. I really do appreciate you coming on, Katie. And I appreciate all the work that you've done. Keep it up. That's the only thing I can say there is keep it up because you're doing a phenomenal job. Um, and for all my viewers out there, Smoke Pit every Wednesday and Saturday, 8 to 10. That's
Yep.
Eastern time.
Yeah.
Yep.
Mhm.
Figured Florida. So, but make sure that you go and tune in there if you want to get the veterans perspective. But once again, Katie, thank you very much for coming on.
Yeah, thanks for having me, and thanks
All
for
right.
joining our group. I'm excited.
I'm glad to be part of it. All right, folks, until next time.